Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. The first episode of every month is where we dig a little bit deeper with an amazing guest in a raw, honest, largely unedited conversation. I'm James Marriott, I'm your host. I run an audio marketing business in Sheffield which is called Sound Media, and on Steel City Business Uncut I'm joined by co-host Stephen Kenwright, who was co-founder of Rise at 7 before exiting in late 2022. Right, let's do it. Welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. I'm James. The brains of the operation is back with us. Hello, Stephen.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're the brains of the operation. Make some reference to me being something else, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're very, very much the brains of this. We are still here at our temporary home of Ride Shotgun at Victoria Quays in Sheffield, and we are joined today by Christina King, who is Chief Commercial Officer at Tribosonics in Sheffield. Christina, your LinkedIn describes you as an innovator, leader and relationship builder with over 20 years in the engineering and innovation space, which is one of the best kind of little mini introductions I've ever seen on LinkedIn. Is that fair? Is there anything you would add to that?
Don't start with I don't think so. I just like a little short, snappy title. I've done a lot of different things in my career. I started off as an engineer and then went more into the commercialisation space as a commercial person. So I think that kind of encapsulates it in one sentence. I'm sure we'll go into some of the examples.
Well, we will. I've been really excited about chatting to you, Christina, because you seem to have done some really mega interesting stuff. And I'm looking forward to kind of digging into that. It's also worth mentioning, by the way, this is a first for Stephen and I on this podcast, because this is the first time that we've done an uncut episode with someone that neither of us has met prior to the moment you walked through the door 10 minutes ago. Neither of you had ever met you. So I don't know if that will change the flow of things. I don't know, but we are very genuinely getting to know you as we chat. Let's start at the beginning then. Well, how far back do you want to go? Is there anything from your upbringing, your childhood, your education that you think is worth mentioning?
Well, I had a normal upbringing, went to a state school. My parents didn't go. In fact, my mum did go to university, but she didn't finish because she was born in Egypt, although she's Greek, and she had to go to an American university. So it's all a bit complicated. Anyway, neither of my parents finished university. It was in all the top sets at school, but it wasn't it was a fairly good school, but not, anything stunning. Harlow in Essex, just outside London. And I wanted to be, I don't know where I got it from. I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was younger.
Okay.
Maybe I saw Top Gun. So my parents took me to the RAF kind of recruitment place, and they said, oh, you need to, I think I was about 12. So it's really strange. And they said, oh, you need to join the Air Training Corps. So I thought, great, okay, what's that? So it's kind of an organisation for young people that are interested in the forces. And I was like, yes, I want to be a fighter pilot, let's do that. So that's kind of what...
We can all relate to that in some way. I think fighter pilot, train driver, astronaut, probably things that we all at some point imagine being. So you went to university in Leeds. Boo.
Actually, I did go to university in Leeds to do my MBA, but I went to university in Brunel.
Oh, wow, all right. Well, let's focus on that bit, because that's more interesting. But then your first job, and apologies if I oversimplify this, your first job was building tanks.
Yes.
That sounds amazing.
It was amazing. Yeah, main battle tanks for the British Army, so Challenger 2s. I joined as a graduate on the graduate scheme, which was basically 2 years. You get to do loads of fun stuff and move between departments, do lots of training, go to the Lake District for a week to do team building. It was, if I could have just done that in my career, it would have been amazing. So yeah, you get to kind of move around. One of the best departments to go into was the trials department. So you do batch testing of 12 that come off the production line. So you take 4 down to Bovington, which is where they trial the tanks, and you stay there for about 2 months. And you do lots of, you get them prepped because they don't come off the line ready. You get them prepared. You do some kind of live firing, firing on the move, cross country, all the rest of it. And and you have to kind of look after them and support. So I supported one of the crews on that trial. And there's 2 big interesting things that came out of that. One was they let me drive one. Probably shouldn't say that.
Literally,
on here,
my next question was going to be, did you get to drive a tank?
Yes, I did. Probably wasn't allowed to, and definitely wouldn't be allowed to now. There'd be lots of paperwork. But yeah, they said, right, I was in the loader station. There's four people on a tank. I was in the loader station. They said, okay, we'll just pull over. Do you want to have a go? I'm like, yes. And the driver's right at the front, so you're not with the other people in the turret, but you can hear them. You have to have your headset on. So they pulled over us, kind of got in. He said, right, it's just tillers, basically, left, right, start, stop, fully automatic. It's really easy to drive, actually. That's why you start as a driver when you're in the tank crew.
Right.
So I set off, and they're bearing in mind there's all cameras and microphones because you have to look at when it breaks down what's happened and things like that. So I set off and it went into this pond and I just panicked. So I stopped, which is not the thing to do because all the water, the bow wave went away and then the place I'm sitting is open. All the muddy water came in and there was so much water it went into the turret. So they all saw it coming through the bottom. And I used a lot of expletives, which I won't do on this podcast. I'll try not to. And I couldn't believe it. And they're like, keep going. And they're going, and this is cross country. They're going, go faster, because the independent suspension works better if you go faster. So I'm going quite fast. I had to take my glasses off because I couldn't see because of the mud, which is a bit dangerous again, but it's fine. I could see enough. And it was a very interesting experience. So that was great. And my future husband was the gunner on the tank.
Oh, wow.
So, we live near about half an hour away from Sheffield now with 2 children, and that was the start of the relationship.
Do you have a tank in the garage at home?
No, but we do have a fin round on the windowsill of our house. It's a replica, it's not a real one, but it's one of the... It looks like an arrow, basically, which is one of the things that goes in. They get wrapped up in a sabot thing, and that's what gets fired.
That's cool. I have like a plant on my window. I feel really uncool at the side of...
Yeah, people look at it and think, what's that? So, it was a really interesting time. It was great to be at the forefront of technology and, they're quite complex beasts. There's a lot of software. There's a whole kind of protection system of tanks because of the armour, plus all the kind of, if there's biological warfare, things like that. There's overpressure systems. They're quite complex machines. And it was great to work in a company like that, Vickers, because I was in the Vickers Defence, but there was also aerospace, there was marine, Cosworth were owned by them at the time. So it was great, a great place to start and get the corporate experience.
That is really interesting because part of me sort of thinks that when you think about a tank, you just think about it's just big, isn't it? and it's just brute force. It will just it can just deal with anything. But you don't think about it actually being quite advanced in terms of technology. You think about it just being big and heavy, and if you get in the way of it, it's just gonna it's gonna flatten you. That's what a tank does. And then there's a big gun on the top that you kind of swivel around and shoot people with, or shoot buildings with, or do whatever you're going to do with it. I don't think I really considered and appreciated the fact that it is a really advanced kind of technological beast. So that's really interesting.
And while you say it's big, it's actually quite small.
Oh, is it?
Inside for the people.
Is that because of the amount of tech and stuff in there that you're a little bit...
There's not much room to move.
Quite uncomfortable.
You've got a gunner who's sitting there. The commander's sitting pretty much behind him. And then you've got the loader. And the loader's probably got the most room. But you've got to be careful because the gun's moving. And then you've got the driver right in the front station. So it's very small. And if they're fully loaded up, because I saw all this... They get this big crate, basically, of all the stuff that has to be fitted into the tank if they're going out to practice or obviously to war. They have to be able to survive on that for weeks. So all your food, ration packs, how they sleep, everything, how they go toilet.
Cool.
Because if there's a nuclear warfare, then you obviously have to stay on the tank. And, you know, it is hopefully, you know, you don't want us to be in war, but sometimes it's the only way that you can kind of get land. I know a lot of wars are fought by kind of drones and things like that, but to get the land and to protect places, you do have to have a land presence. And that's kind of how it is, unfortunately.
Well, welcome to the Talking Tanks podcast.
Yeah.
We're about a third of the way through today's episode now. What's the most interesting thing you've ever driven, Stephen?
I feel like I haven't really driven anything interesting now.
No, I feel like
I would have said otherwise, and all of a sudden I disagree. Yeah,
there's something going through my head in terms of like taking Steel City Business UNCUT on the road, doing something in some kind of vehicle. Like, surely we can make that happen.
Oh, I thought you meant like get a tank and then like park it outside Leeds Business Podcast's headquarters.
That would certainly make a statement.
Anyway.
We're gonna make that happen. We've said it now.
That would go viral.
It's on record. We're gonna do it.
Yeah.
So, how old are you at this point, and what are you thinking in terms of where you want your career to go at that point?
So I think it's early 20s when I joined there, and unfortunately, when I joined, I just moved up to Leeds because they were in Leeds and they were in Newcastle. And 7 days after I started, and I'd never been up north that far before. I haven't gone back down south, by the way. But I love it up north. So 7 days after I started, they announced the closure of the Newcastle site. Right. Sorry, of the Leeds site. It was supposed to be Newcastle, but they just closed Fujitsu up there that week. So the government said, we can't close another big company up here. We've got to close Leeds. So we thought we were safe because, you know, they owned the site. There was a test track in the Leeds site. You know, there's a few hundred people there. And so that's always a bit of a shock. But when they kind of make a big kind of company like that to close a whole site and make them redundant, it doesn't happen like that. It's, you know, it's a 3-year process. It's the manufacturing that they shut down, but they've still got orders to complete. So there's lots of incentives to reduce people kind of going off on sick and things like that. There's teams that come in to help people to try and secure new jobs. And, you know, it's a real shame that there's a lot of really experienced engineers and lots of different people. They kind of lost all that expertise in the region. People were coming up to retirement, so that was fine. So, yeah, I mean, in the end, they all got bought out by British Aerospace Systems or BAE Systems, and people survived there kind of 10 years beyond the fact that I was there. Right. I was only there about 5 years in the end, not because of that reason, but it's not nice being in a sector where it's kind of contracting. You want to be in a sector where it's growing. I also saw that, you know, maybe being a senior engineer and principal engineer wasn't quite where I wanted. I could see people that were 10 years ahead of me, and I thought, I'm not sure if that's where I want to be, because I felt I had a lot more to offer and a lot more skills being, you know, when I did my A-levels, I did physics, maths and English literature. No one did those choices. So I could communicate and write a lot better than a lot of the other engineers that I kind of worked with. So I kind of got interested in the commercial side as well. But I thought, how can I combine those two things together? So, yeah, that's why I kind of moved then to a consultancy company that still wanted an engineering background, but also looked at wider kind of tech and scale and growth of smaller businesses. And that's why I got the bug for smaller businesses.
So were you kind of thinking at that point that tech in some way or another is where you're always going to be?
Yes, definitely.
Was that kind of like felt like your calling?
Yeah, it's funny it's called tech now, but in my day it was called like engineering. So I want... But because sometimes tech, and it's interesting with Boston, they've talked about hard tech, tough tech. There's lots of different descriptions of tech. But yes, engineering and tech is definitely what excites me. I like that space and I like working in that. And that's why that's been a thread throughout my career. And I'm sure will continue to be.
So one of the things that you said really early on when we started talking about like the early days of your journey, you just kind of casually threw out state school. and then I can see, Brunel, and then when you pivoted to the career you've got now, MBA and Harvard on the CV as well. And I'm just curious, like when I came through a state school system as well, and I've always felt like education's really important, but that's not the narrative that you hear very often. A lot of the time you hear people saying university maybe not the best route for a lot of people. And I'm just curious, like, it seems to me like you've always valued that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I've been, my mum was a very big influence on me. Her dream was that I would go to university. I think either because she didn't finish or she knew that education was really important. And it is really important. I feel the same for my children. So, she fought to get me in the best school. She kind of encouraged me to go uni. I think she would have been she wouldn't have liked it if I'd probably gone in the arts, I think. Although she's a lot more relaxed now, because I think my daughter's a lot more interested in that side, and she's very talented in that side, and we're encouraging of that. So yeah, I strongly believe in an education, and because it opens doors and it just gives you options. Because I've got a lot to say about obviously unis now, but in my day I was one of the last people to go where it was free. The fees were paid for by my local council. My dad had just been made redundant, so we did get some help towards my fees. I was one of the very lucky people that didn't come out with any debt, because my mum worked 2 jobs to make sure I could come out of uni without having debt. And because I did engineering, we had one of the most hours in the week. So while some of my cohort did work, she didn't want me to work while I was studying. So I worked in the summer holidays, but not while I was studying. So, that was a massive influence on me, and, really believe in that. And that's why when I did my MBA as well, I was going to do it with work, and I thought they'd sponsor me, but they said it was a smaller business, and they looked at it, but they said they couldn't, which is fine. But then it was the best thing that happened, because then I considered, well, actually, if I'm paying for it all, I want to do it full time and get the most out of it. So I had to sell my car at the time. My husband had to support us, we had quite a low mortgage at the time. So circumstances just helped facilitate the fact that I could do that. But yeah, that's what I say. It does open doors. Now I think it's very difficult, and it's a very big decision to go to university with them. They were talking on the news this morning, 50,000 is the average debt that people come out of university. A lot of parents, I know, I was talking to one of my friends last night, she can't afford to give her daughter any money to support her at university. Apprenticeships are brilliant. We've got apprenticeships at our place. I probably would have been suited a bit better. Now I understand a lot more about life and education. I think that would have been a great route for me, because I was a lot better doing project work, practical work, than the kind of academic studying. Because I was never, until I did my MBA, I never kind of got the highest marks. So I really believe that the apprenticeship route is great for young people now, because they can get their qualification degrees. They can go back and do a master's if they want to pay for that themselves, and it won't be as a big thing. So yeah, I am a big believer in the education system.
What made you want to do the MBA? Because that sounds like a big change in life circumstances.
Yeah. I think when you do an engineering degree, that was the other thing I was going to say. On my engineering degree, there's 4 in my kind of close network of friends. One's an MP, one's a maths teacher, one's a pilot, commercial pilot, and also me, what I've ended up doing, all did mechanical engineering. So that kind of opened doors. But the next kind of, a lot of people that went into engineering or always kind of considered at some point to do an MBA. That was a kind of a thing. So that was always in my mind to do it. You had to have 7 years experience to do an MBA at Leeds, which I think is great. You couldn't go, like in America, the model is straight after uni, which, one of the most valuable things on the cohort. I think there was 90 people on our cohort in Leeds, all international, Canada, America, Taiwan, China, Korea, all that expertise that you learn in those kind of, not the lectures, what they're called, the kind of group work that you do afterwards was fascinating. And I think I needed it. I wanted to slightly change my career from a management consultant to business development in the renewable sector was my kind of aim. And they gave you a lot of career support if you did it full time. So that's why. And it kind of then springboarded me up to not quite go into that role straight away, but provide the route for me to get there.
How did you decide on business development? Because it's a fun. I've always loved it. It's always been part of my role, and very occasionally it's been my full-time role, and I've always enjoyed that aspect of the job. But a big shift. Again, what made you decide to go down that route?
I think I like people. I like relationships. I don't like sales. People is funny. Oh, it's like a used car sale. Well, no, it isn't. It's more about learning about the other person's business, what they're wanting. Can we kind of help kind of create something together, and really, pushing that forward and facilitating that and making things happen. I think I understand it a bit more now and can articulate it. I think at the time I thought it's kind of an engineering role, not role, but sector, but maintaining my kind of place in that sector in a role that I could do and bring something to the party. I think that's what I kind of thought.
I think sales has obviously got that reputation.
Yeah.
I don't think it's really, and especially in a consultative environment like this, it's not about persuading anyone. It's about facilitating and helping someone to get to the outcome that they want. And I think a big part of the job, especially when you do something as complicated as you do, is just consistently telling people we actually can't do that thing. That's not feasible, that's not possible, or that's going to be really expensive, or whatever it might be. But just helping guide people to a solution that is actually going to help them, or educate them on a potential different way of doing things.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how I see it. And it's a great kind of place to be, I think, business development. You're learning new things, you're meeting new people, you're learning about other sectors. So, yeah, it's fascinating. So I like this world.
There's loads more stuff on your CV that I want to dig into. Next thing on my list is Carbon Trust Incubator. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was in the time where there's a big thing now on climate tech and clean tech, but this is over 10 years ago. The Carbon Trust has always been a real leader in the sector to try and help those businesses to kind of reduce carbon and to make real change in industry. So the Carbon Trust Incubator was a virtual incubator because they, at the time they didn't have the money for facilities, or there probably wasn't enough businesses to kind of get into those areas, and the businesses could have been all over the UK. And we had the contract in that, the company that I worked in at the time, to really support those kind of scale-up businesses, to help them secure funding, to really kind of build out their business case. And it was, renewable kind of wind turbines was there, and there was early stage battery businesses, and really kind of helping those to grow and to thrive. So I'm quite proud of that, because and now it's a thing, isn't it? And it should be, absolutely. But this was quite a while ago when it wasn't really recognised as something we should all be focused on.
Is it enough of a thing, do you think? I'm jumping around a little here because I wanted to talk to you a bit about net zero 2030. We're recording this a couple of days before the general election in 2024. When you listen to this, it will have happened. But I mean, it doesn't feel like something that's been particularly high up on the agenda and talked about much during the election campaign. It's one of those things where it feels like there's been a kind of a conspiracy between the parties to say, let's just all gloss over that, because it doesn't feel like we're getting particularly close to meeting any of those kind of targets.
I think it's a really difficult one, because a lot of kind of families and people are feeling pain in other areas of their immediate kind of life, and, cost of living. So, your hierarchy of needs, you want to sort your family out and how you live first, and the stresses you've got with that, with your job. So I can see why that's where the focus of the election has been, because they need to do that. They do need to make a stance, though, on, saving our planet. We all need to work together as different nations to do that. You know, I do work across a lot of different sectors, so you see a lot of different things from the polymer sector, nuclear sector. I think Europe as a whole has got a lot of a mandate, and this is what we're trying to do, and these are what we're aiming for, you know, by 2030. And I think that's great, and they need to do that. But then you've got other nations that our kind of input as Europe might not. It will help, but it's not going to touch the surface if other nations don't do it as well.
Yeah.
It's got to be a combined effort. It's not an easy challenge to fix. There is a lot of investment going into it. I mean, China's really leading the way for electric vehicles, and because they can see that's going to kind of take on the market. But then you've still got to charge those. They still use quite interesting materials in those batteries, the manufacturing methods. It's a complex kind of picture, but it is on the agenda, and it's definitely in the agenda of the sectors we're speaking to. Right. There's a lot of regulations coming in the energy industry for emissions that they'll be charged if there's going to be emissions coming out of their facilities and plants. So I can see there's movement, but it needs to be, you know, we need to do more, obviously.
It just feels like 2030 is really not that far away now. And once upon a time, you talk about 2030 like it was some mysterious time in the future, and it'll be like, yeah, everything will be sorted by then. The world will be fine. And it's now, just over 5 years away. And that's really not far away at all. And the reason that I kind of think about this is I feel like right here in the UK, we seem quite far behind on it. So the most recent place that I've been away was to Scandinavia. In Denmark, all electric buses.
Yes.
And they have some kind of, my friend tried to explain to me, some kind of crazy, like they charge from the roof. They drive into this thing, this massive kind of charger drops down onto the roof, charges it up, and then off it goes. And I think technically they could probably charge it with people still in the bus. Like, it's just really clever the way that it does that. And then you come here and you see like our buses, and there's like a plume of smoke coming out the back of it, and it's so loud and noisy as it kind of chugs along the road, and you think, God blimey, we are so far behind, we really are. And then you sort of think, do they care? Does anyone care? Like, is this something that's even remotely achievable by 2030? But it's interesting you talking about the sectors that you work in, and you are seeing stuff happening. So that's really, really good to hear.
It's a lot of investment, though, isn't it? It always comes down to money. You've got to invest in these like vehicles, and you know, how do you make? I mean, I think the politicians have got a hard job, really, because you've got a budget and you've got some money to work with. Everyone's screaming over here about the NHS, which you do have to fix. Yeah. You know, how do you make those decisions? I wouldn't like to do it. I think it's really difficult, and they do have to work together, stop arguing, and kind of get on and kind of, you know, there's lots of clever people there, sort it out.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see what happens.
You did right how you kind of talk about it, because, you know, if you say to people, do you care about net zero? Do you care about the environment? Do you care about it? And people go, yeah, I do, but I care more about what's going to happen when I need to go into a care home when I get older. I care more about social care. I care more about, can I afford to buy food this week? And exactly. Of course they're going to do, aren't they? So it is an impossible equation to solve at the moment, but good to kind of chat that through.
But technology will enable it, and there are great technologies around that will solve some of these problems. But because it's hard tech, that also needs investment to kind of scale and help kind of get into the market. So, you know, that will be part of the solution, not all of the solution. And as we say, it's investment and learning to kind of work together and solving these things. So it is on the agenda. Maybe it needs to be higher. Let's see. Because I saw a really frightening thing, and I can send it to you afterwards. I went to one event, and the temperature rise of the planet, it's only a few, and then life's not livable, basically. That's one of the most shocking things that I've seen. And we see it all the time, that it's rising, isn't it, every year.
Stephen, one of the byproducts of being the brains of the operation is that you've got to solve this problem now. So you got 2 minutes to
go on, Steve,
to solve
it. You can do
it. It's like we've said, it's a complicated problem, and I think it's always interesting to think about like the range of policies out there, because you're talking about the Scandinavian countries, very high tax and a lot of investment publicly in that. And then you talk about we haven't talked about the American model, but very low tax and absolutely no investment in those things. But I think it's interesting to kind of reconcile that with what you're talking about, Christina, which is a lot of the innovation is coming from companies that may be not publicly funded companies that are in, industry and are looking to make a profit from those things. So, hopefully, I think that gives some degree of hope that actually, even in the kind of American model where there hasn't been that investment in public infrastructure because there is such an emphasis on the capital markets, actually, when the innovation happens, it can win if that's the most profitable, if that's the most useful way of actually growing businesses. So I think it's got, you always think about when you see these issues raised in the news, often it's Just Stop Oil and that kind of activism group, and you sort of think, are they helping or not? And actually the pressure that they put on politicians and businesses arguably is making it possible for these kind of initiatives from the EU and so on, and the UK government to actually, gives them the support to enact those penalties on polluters and so on. But it's such a complicated issue, and I'm afraid I've just failed as the brains of the operation.
Hasn't solved it.
3 minutes and we would have been okay, I think.
I think 3 days and we'd be still struggling, wouldn't we? It is a difficult one. I'm going to change pace hugely here. This is a real kind of breakneck change of pace. So you've been involved in breaking a world record.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so I don't know if you've heard of Guy Martin. So he's a motorbike extraordinaire racer, and he's done quite a lot of different programs now on TV, but one of the ones he was doing is trying to break or set new world records in different ways. And he kind of worked with different universities and different kind of experts in very different fields to do that. So when I worked at Sheffield Hallam University, and I worked with a sports engineering research team, we worked with him twice, actually. The first time I didn't work on that project was a gravity sledge, and interestingly broke the world record for that, because usually what happened in some of his programs is it was just a challenge, and he didn't usually break the record or set the record, but it was, his journey of getting there, and, he's really doing it on a budget. But the second time they approached us and said, we'd like to do another program. Have you got a team? So, yep. And we had a kind of mixed team, females, males. And it was about a gravity racer. So it's a non-kind of powered vehicle. It has to stop successfully, safely to get the record, which is an odd thing, really. I don't know whether it's a safety thing, but anyway, that was part of the rules. The other rule is you had to do it within 100 metres, and there was a proper timed gate, and someone from Guinness World Records was there. You have to film it all. So there is a lot of rules. So anyway, so they came in. We were going to do it in Brazil or something, and then they told us, and this is the budget. So you get quite a small budget, and I suppose there's this incentive that you're going to obviously get on TV and it'll be good for marketing. So, but it was a challenge, and we had to do it in about 4 months, which, from scratch with nothing is pretty, incredible. And the team that came together was fantastic for that. So in the end, we did it at Mont Ventoux, where they do the Tour de France. That was we had to find somewhere that was steep enough that would build up the speed. So we did that. We did it on the 12th run, I think. Yeah, because the 13th one we had a bit of a crash. So the 12th run we did it. We got the figure that we needed, and then we're all kind of celebrating. It was brilliant. And we were like, right, we've got one more run, because I had to close the road. We had an ambulance following down. It was like the last chance. So we're like, wow, let's try and get to 90. So we did everything that you shouldn't do in engineering, which is change everything on the last run. We'd change slowly up to 12 runs. You're just changing one thing at the time to increase the speed. So we chucked more weight in. Yeah, we pumped the tyres up a little bit more. We did everything you shouldn't do. And then, he crashed on the last one, which was very shocking at the time. I think my friend thought we'd killed him.
Oh,
I thought, this is really bad. He was absolutely fine, and the roll bar protected him. Right. And that's what got us on Gogglebox, that people were more impressed with than the actual TV programme. So we did it, and it was an amazing experience. We didn't know how they were going to present it, because TV programmes, they cut things out, and you'll spend a whole day filming for 5 minutes. It was a real eye-opener of how that world works. But when it aired on, I think it was November in the end, and we couldn't tell anyone if we'd done it or not. It was, an amazing experience, a great challenge to kind of put together. And it then enabled us. We did some talks at science festivals up in Bradford. I've talked about it in schools because a couple of us are STEM ambassadors.
Right. I bet that really engages people, because that's pretty cool, isn't it? Like, breaking a world speed record is just awesome.
It was great. I took it into my kids' primary school. They were in primary school at the time, and I never had so many crazy questions from 8-year-olds. Why didn't you drive it like off a cliff, or why didn't you go down a slope that's like this? It was amazing. And it does engage people into, engineering is a really wide subject. There'll be something for everyone. Whatever sector you work in, there'll be something in engineering that you will engage with. And that's obviously quite exciting. So, yeah.
Did you get anything? So did you all get like a certificate, or keep a bit of something as a memento for that, or is it all just up here?
No, you do get a copy of the certificate of the Guinness World Record. So we got that. The university's got that. The car ended up in a museum, I think, up in Scotland somewhere, because it's all a bit battered. It's a real shame, because it was nice, and it sounded like a bullet when it went down.
I need to go back and watch this now.
Yeah, you can get it. You can see it on YouTube.
Does that record still stand?
I don't think so. I should have looked before. I know my friend Alice, she used to keep an eye on it. I'd have to let you know afterwards. Have a little Google.
Just lie. Just say. Does that record still stand?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'd love to be a world record holder for something. I think mine would be most donuts eaten in 1 minute. I think I could do that.
There's lots of weird and wonderful records that you can, either set yourself or beat. Yeah, it's an interesting world to get into. It's
a great LinkedIn post, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just broke a world record. Yeah. Another good day in the office. That's amazing. That's amazing. So you're our second guest in 3 months that has just returned from Boston. Tell us all about that.
Okay, so the Royal Academy of Engineering, which is based down in London, and it's originated from the Royal Society, and they're there to kind of support engineers in business. But the Royal Academy of Engineering, I think, only set up in the 70s. Their charity, supported by, I think, King Charles is the patron, which is quite exciting. And I'm a big advocate of them. They're the reason I went to Harvard. It was through a SME Leaders Scheme. You didn't have to be an engineer, you just had to be a leader of an engineering company that I applied for. And they gave you £10,000. This is the previous programme, to spend on any leadership program around the world. So I was like, okay, I need to go Harvard or MIT during COVID. I got there, it was great. So this second program was for the alumni of anybody who had been on any of their programs, and they've done quite a lot. And I would definitely recommend, it's very much the people who've been on these programs, Cambridge, Oxford, London centric. There's not many northern companies on there, but there is a contact now in Sheffield she lives in Sheffield, and she works down at the Royal Academy. So, a big advocate for the programs. Do look into them. So this specific one was an explore mission. So they were taking out a cohort to Boston for a week, all fully funded, to look at the hard tech ecosystem. So really to provide a platform and contacts and different industries to go and look at to kind of set you up for either getting more business there, or some of the other cohort members want to set up their operation there. And it's a really good kind of launch off point, if you like, to do that. So they supported that. There was a focus on, I think it was energy, the energy sector, energy storage, infrastructure and associated technology. And obviously we're in sensing technology, so we do kind of cover that sector. So they funded all that. Plus, they give you a £12,000 additional grant to support kind of other activities. So I extended my stay for about 4 days afterwards, which they're going to cover as well. And that was to kind of set up meetings with potential customers while I was there. So, I mean, it's an incredible place. I don't know if you've been. It's not like, I've been a few places in the States, and I really like Boston. I could see myself living there from a number of different aspects. So from a personal kind of well-being, there's so many runners out every day, and it was 30-degree heat all along the river and just running. It'd be like a race here. There's so many people out. So that, it's very much a walkable city. So you don't need to kind of get a car. In most other places, America, you do. So you can walk to everywhere. Where we were based at the Cambridge Innovation Centre is really, it says it's the most kind of innovative square mile in the world, because you've got that, you've got you've got the engine, which is part of MIT. MIT's there just down the road. You've got Harvard, obviously. You've got all these tech businesses that are just all kind of in that melting pot of that ecosystem. They've got a thing called Greentown Labs, which is a little bit out of Boston. It's about half an hour in an Uber. And that's all kind of focused on climate tech and clean tech businesses. And it's a bit like a startup hub. But they've also got all the corporate partners there. And there must be about, 50 of all the big names, energy companies that are all there trying to engage and collaborate with these startups to really kind of solve the problems we were talking about earlier. So I think just to kind of get into that network and meet some of the people there and learn about how they kind of do business, how they kind of scale. I mean, they get a lot more investment over their scale ups. I mean, they're kind of, pre-series round of $18 million. It's just like, blows you away when we're not in that league here. So it's, really great to kind of be part of that network.
Sounds really cool. I've never been to Boston, but the Boston Business Podcast, that's the spin-off that we're gonna launch.
Yes, you should definitely do that.
We're off. We're gonna do it.
It's incredible. You'd have a good time over there. It's fantastic.
I would like... All right, so...
Okay. Hard question coming up.
The problem is, because you're very interesting, we've got like an hour through a podcast and not really asked you what Tribosonics.
Okay, yes, I should say that.
And I would love to know, you've got this beautifully succinct LinkedIn bio that really explains exactly what you do. I'd love to know, what does Tribosonics do?
So, Tribosonics is a sensing technology company. We use a technology called ultrasonics. So that's a little bit like a baby monitor. Sends waves into a system, it comes back, it gets encoded. That's how you see the baby. But we use it for industrial purposes. So we can put a sensor on the outside of a system, like a machine or a process. We send a wave in and we can get new data that you can't get from off-the-shelf kind of sensors and technology. So that can open a whole new kind of area of, either saving emissions, new data points to really understand the system, where they're having leaks, things like that, whether your process is fully kind of performing at its best. So that's kind of one thing. And we've got two areas of our technology. One is active ultrasonics, where we're sending a wave into a system, it gets encoded, comes out. And we also do passive ultrasonics, so we're listening for things. So not what we can hear as humans. So we could hear, say, like a pressure relief valve or a safety valve. If it's open, close, or if it's leaking, we can detect that. And we can do that quite efficiently at low cost with low kind of power battery systems to really enable some scale. So we do the whole end-to-end system. So we do everything from the sensing, the data acquisition system, the algorithms to translate that information through to kind of the information and the data point that our customers get. So hope that helps. I can give you some examples of use cases if you want.
I would love an example of a use case, yeah.
Okay. So let's see. So in the polymer processing industry, they have quite kind of, big equipment, runs for 24 hours a day. They have a screw and a barrel kind of working to push the polymer through. And if that screw wears gradually over time, and usually what they have to do is they have to stop a line for maybe 7 days, let it all cool, take it out, measure it. Okay, it's not worn enough, but there's no point putting it back. So that's a waste of that. It could run for, maybe, a few more months. They have to put a new one in, start it all up, and off they go again. So we worked with a big customer in Austria, Engel, and they make injection molding machines for Lego and a lot of the big automotive companies. And we developed a technology where we sense from the outside how their screws are wearing very accurately. So some of our technology we can measure accurately to the thickness of a human hair, for example. So that gives them information. They can then be more efficient with their process, more efficient with when their maintenance stops are going to be, and obviously save in terms of not wasting the material of that screw for that purpose.
Why? I don't want to say this as if it's a particularly loaded question, but this is the only way I can think to kind of phrase it without spending 10 minutes thinking about it. Why is Sheffield still the right place for the business to be based?
Well, we've got 40 people that work in Tribosonics. The majority of people are Sheffield based. We've kind of built up a really key team. So we've got anything from kind of PhD level R&D scientists, if you like, that really look at new kind of applications and see, can we get a signal through that? How will we make that measurement? We have to do some lab-based work. So, we've attracted some of those people either out of the universities locally, or we've attracted people up to Sheffield to come and work with us for that. Then we've got our engineering kind of team that packages that up. And we've got a lot of those out from the apprenticeship scheme from the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre. Is a really great route. I mean, some years we've had kind of 7 apprentices, and those are now kind of engineering managers. So we've really created our own talent pool through the local economy and local kind of, academic kind of institutions. But we're also actually leveraging, one of my teams just completed his business degree with Aston University, for example. He's based in Sheffield. One of the other teams doing a data science degree, doing it with York. One of the others is doing it with Nottingham, a project management degree apprenticeship. So we're starting to kind of get, because that's where we feel the expertise was, but they are based in Sheffield and they're coming to us to kind of work with us. And I think it's all about people at the end of the day. So I think that's why we're kind of based in Sheffield. Our business, you can be very international now without having to be. It helps to be located places, and we do travel, not all the time, but very, I would say, sustainably. When we want to kind of go and really move a project forward, we might take a team, or we have to deliver something or install our systems, then we will kind of travel to those. But a lot of the business is done kind of on Teams now. That's been facilitated a lot more during COVID. So I think that's enabled businesses to be based anywhere. It's a lot cheaper to be up north than it is, say, in London. I don't think London would be that good for us anyway. It's only 2 hours away by train.
It's not that far, is it, in the great scheme of things? This is also going to sound like a bit of a loaded question, and it genuinely isn't. But I didn't really know anything about Tribosonics before we sat down an hour ago, and obviously the research that I'd done before today's episode. But until we first spoke on LinkedIn, I knew nothing about you. There will be other businesses in Sheffield that are doing really interesting stuff that's really innovative that I probably don't know anything about. And, I'm someone that, kind of leads a business podcast based in Sheffield. Yeah. I should know about this. So, in terms of the public out there, the majority of people won't know a lot about these businesses. What can we do to kind of make a bit more noise about some of the innovation that goes on in Sheffield, do you think? Yeah,
it's an interesting question, because I hadn't either. And I think there are some great businesses in Sheffield, but when you're when you're scaling and you're a smaller business, your focus is on the business, isn't it? It's not always on, I've worked in public sector, so I know you've got a little bit more time to kind of do a little bit more networking and things like that, but you haven't as a small business. So, we try and do some targeted things. I know quite a lot of people in Sheffield, people who know me know about Tribosonics. How can we... I think Leeds, I know we talked about Leeds earlier, they have got something right. They seem to have a good ecosystem up there and a bit of a good network going in terms of people are aware of the different businesses and they're coming together really well. I think we should take some lessons from them. Mm-hmm. I think we need to be a bit more coordinated as a city. I think some of the more kind of public sector kind of organisations here probably need to get a bit better marketing and coordinate that a bit better, really kind of showcase Sheffield tech and marketing and all the different sectors that are here and try and pull that all together, because we can provide some information. We can't do a lot of that because we're trying to build the business and build a sustainable business here, but we just need someone to kind of champion us. I think that's the answer for me here.
There's good points though, and I think I've said before, like, I've never wanted this podcast to become something that kind of beats Sheffield up, because I think it's really lazy when people go, "Oh, Sheffield's so bad at promoting itself, and the council will never do anything," and all that kind of stuff. But it feels like we're at a place, and there is a really interesting place that's not that far down the road if we put those right little kind of stepping stones in place. And some of that we're getting right, some of that I'm not really seeing, but it'd be great if we do see it, because there is some great stuff happening here, and you're absolutely right to mention other places where there is a bit more kind of public awareness as to what's going on, and hopefully that's not too far away. This is a slightly strange question to ask, but I wanted to do this. Is there anyone that you want to kind of give any love to, anyone that you want to kind of shout out in terms of people in Sheffield that are doing really amazing things that we might not know about, whether that is individuals or whether that is other businesses?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I should have been a bit more prepared for that. I think who I'd like to give, a lot of love to is no one specific. I don't want to name names, but, the Women in Tech network. I mean, that is the way that I came onto this podcast, wasn't it? It was I think you put a post out and loads of people responded to that. And, and I think I've worked in quite a male-dominated industry for all of my career. I think there's loads more women in tech now, which I think is fantastic. You don't have to have a technical background to work in this sector. And I think I would like to give out my love to those people.
Well said. Well said. Very good. There's one more thing that I want to ask you, and that is, we've talked about driving a tank, breaking a world record, all kinds of other things that you've been up to. What's still on the bucket list? What do you still want to achieve?
Wow. Well, the big thing I want to achieve is, really with Tribosonics, is to get our technology out and scaled and, into the thousands and really kind of show that we've made that kind of journey happen. It's not easy in our sector. And I know for other hard tech businesses, it's the same. You're talking electronics, software, systems that have to go in hazardous environments, difficult, complex projects. It's, we really, and we're getting there. We're getting really close now. So I'm quite excited about kind of doing that and getting that done. And I think next, I really like working in this kind of space. I like working with innovative technology. I like kind of the challenge it takes to get that into the market. We work with a lot of large corporates. They are interested. They do want to work with you, but they have all their legacy kind of contracts, and we have to kind of work our way through that jungle. But it's quite an interesting space, and when you've done it, it feels really great. So, yeah.
So is jet pilot, is that off the agenda now?
Yeah, unfortunately, I got through the aptitude test, which was great because loads of people fail that. But then I failed on the medical, so for 3 reasons. And there's very gender bias now, I realise. One is, well, my eyesight wasn't that bad then. One is glasses. You can't wear glasses. You have to have 20/20 vision. Second thing, I was too light. So you have to be 9 stone. I'd be all right now. 9 stone to sit in the cockpit. Third reason, they sit you in a contraption and they said, oh, you'll have to sit so far forward because of the pedals that your legs will come off when you eject.
Oh, blimey.
Because the fighter jets are made basically for a male profile. So I know. So, and obviously they're millions and millions of pounds, and I'm sure they're not going to change them. But that was a reason. That's why you're out.
Wow. Well, it still sounds like you've achieved some amazing stuff. I'm sure there's still plenty to come as well. I could quite happily sit here and talk all day long because there's still loads of stuff on my list that we've not even touched on, but we've run out of time. Christina, thank you for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to chat to you. The best of luck for the future with Tribosonics as well.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you both.
Right, we've got some flights to Boston to get booked. Come on.
Deal.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Steel City Business. It's been really lovely to have you with us. Now, you know how this works. If you've enjoyed it and you want in on future episodes, then just follow us on your podcast app or on YouTube. The show is very active on LinkedIn. Just search for Steel City Business and come and connect with me as well while you're at it. Big thank you to The Curious for helping make this podcast happen. There's loads more about the show at steelcity.business, and you can get in touch by emailing james@steelcity.business. And hey, if you're in business in Sheffield, then, well, why not put yourself forward as a guest for a future episode? And of course, we're always open for a good chat about how audio marketing could work for your brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.